Mirasee.
This is all of us sharing our electromagnetic and biome information with each other, because our electromagnetic fields extend 12 to 15 feet in all directions at all times. So if we spend any amount of time with a person, we're sharing our genetic and our bioelectric information constantly with each other. We're just trained away from listening to those intuitive signals to our detriment in a lot of ways.
Hello, and welcome to Consciousness Explored, where we delve into the human experience and consciousness. I'm your host, Melissa Deal. In each episode, we'll dive deep into ways to expand our consciousness and the impact our understanding of consciousness has on every aspect of our lives. On today's episode, I'll be talking with Kevin Russell. Kevin is an author, intuitive, and quantum consciousness coach with over 20 years of experience in transformative practices. Specializing in subconscious transformation and energy healing, Kevin helps others expand their consciousness to achieve more happiness, health, freedom, peace, and abundance. We'll be right back with Kevin's story.
I grew up primarily in Southern California. One story my parents had told me is that I always got people commenting how alert I was when I was young. So I guess I've been kind of observing for a little while in that regard. I had a good time growing up, dealt with some different aspects of not quite feeling like I'm fitting in. I had a lot of food allergies when I was little. We have allergies in my family. My grandma would have eczema explosions where she was just in medicated wraps and just to calm the inflammation. So we've had some kind of epigenetic or ancestral issues in that regard. And mine expressed primarily through food, through diet. So I had food sensitivities. I was on an elimination diet in second grade, which kind of opened me up to how my system interacts with the inputs that I'm giving it. Played sports, did a lot of, everything but football pretty much. Baseball, tennis, soccer, basketball. And then once I got to middle school is when we moved back out to San Diego and I picked up surfing, stuck with that ever since. And it was such a blessing in my life for a multitude of reasons, for the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, the mental. It was a full package. Just being in the ocean, being able to wash off the day, wash off the week regularly was such a huge factor. I was raised Catholic. We came from an Irish Catholic background. It wasn't fulfilling. It didn't fill up my cup, so to speak, on the inside. It felt like doing it because we had to type of thing. If we are good, we go to church. If we are moral, then we believe these things about ourselves and others in the world and God and the devil and light and dark and these polarities, these dualities. And I moved away from organized religion fairly early on in my early teens. Again, the surfing was actually a big catalyst for that because I felt closer to whatever my perception of God is in the water, in the ocean, than I ever did in any building. That was my sanctuary. That was my church. That was my therapy. Went through some stuff, like all of us do in different ways. And 12, 11, 13, I was actually anorexic for about 4 or 5 years. And it was a big issue of control. I didn't feel like I had a lot at the time. And that's one thing that I could control. In retrospect, pulling back the lens, gaining more information about me, about my interaction with the world, about who am I? Where do I fit? What am I? Those types of questions. And high school, another kind of big transformation, transition period, had some dark, challenging thoughts. Probably my first dark night of the soul, had some thoughts about not being here anymore. And that was really one of my first experiences of consciousness expansion. When I had this thought about, maybe I don't want to do this anymore. Maybe I don't want to be here. And I really held myself to task with that idea, with that thought. And in my mind, I just was playing devil's advocate in a way. And I had the thought, and then this other thought in my head said, all right, tough guy, do it. You're brave. You're tough enough to have this thought about checking out. So do it. Not literally, but it was like in my mind, I understood that of like, okay, just do it in your mind. And I did, and moved through the experience to this post-death consciousness space, saw myself in a third person, almost fourth person perspective. It was really crazily emotional. It was really intense. And I was exhausted on the backside of that. But what I found was I had more room inside after I went through this experience, after I went through this process. there was an expansion I couldn't quite understand, a feeling of slightly more vastness internally. And that was really my launching point of awareness of this journey I've been on for the last 20 years.
Kevin went off to university and became a UI/UX designer, designing websites and software applications, which was something he'd actually wanted to do since the 7th grade. He was fascinated with the deeper psychological theories behind the marketing effectiveness of art and design. He married and had a precious baby girl that they named Ryan. By the time their daughter was around 7 years old, Kevin and his wife had been fighting a lot, and neither of them was happy in the relationship. But as many of us do, they kept sweeping it under the rug, until their daughter, Ryan, began displaying some curious symptoms, and then everything changed.
She was scratching and picking at any little blemish or itch that she had, to the point where it looked like she had chickenpox. She just had a lot of little kind of open wounds on her face and on her arms and on her legs. And at the time we were still very externally oriented. So we were like, oh, something's wrong with Ryan. We need to get her help. And serendipitously, my wife's friend had hurt her back in a hiking accident. And even with a back surgery, it didn't relieve the intensity of the pain she was in. So she finds a Western general practitioner doctor who is also practicing a form of muscle testing and subconscious transformation called Touch for Health. No idea what that was at the time, but in just over a year of working with this doctor, her back pain vanished because what she recognized was it wasn't anything to do with the actual physical trauma. She was unhappy in her marriage, and that was causing the pain. We're so symptomatically focused. It's, oh, my back pain, I need to heal the back pain. But the back wasn't in pain. That's how the system was communicating. So my wife takes our daughter to the doctor, and it took a 7-minute conversation and maybe a single muscle test for her to connect with, I get anxious when my parents fight, and I scratch myself because of that. So all it took was that recognition, that awareness, and she literally never did it again. All of her little blemishes healed, never scratched, never picked again. So then the doctor turns to my wife and says, she's fine. You two, on the other hand, that's where the work needs to happen. And we were both in. And that was really the earnest start of our journey in 2016. And it was amazing opening ourselves up to this world of inquiry, of openness, and of asking our body a question and getting an answer. And around the same time, we're doing a lot of research. We're taking a lot of information in. And one research study we came across was around the thoughts that we have at any given day. So about 95 to 98% of our thoughts at any given day are going to be a version of something we've thought before, a repetition. And about 85% of our thoughts are going to tend or trend towards negativity about ourselves or others of the world. So I come across this information. I'm like, why am I listening to anything going on in this hamster wheel merry-go-round in my head? I'm just going to start testing everything.
So Kevin learned how to self-muscle test and began asking questions to his subconscious about everything from what to eat for breakfast to what shirt to wear. He was diligent for 3 years, taking full responsibility for his own thoughts, feelings, and actions, forging new paths for himself and never allowing himself to get stuck in a pattern. Things were going really well, but in the fall of 2019, he had an experience that catapulted him into an even greater expansion of consciousness.
So it was the Thursday before Thanksgiving in 2019, and my wife and a few other people had worked with a practitioner locally in San Diego that did something called biofield harmonics. Hadn't heard of it before, but I was saying yes to everything. I was trying every modality I could get my hands on to find what worked for me. And that's really the key. I recommend everybody try a lot of things because not everything's going to hit for everybody. So I go in, we have a consult, and it's a no touch, no talk session. And it was just right place, right time. So laying on a massage table on my back, I have a blackout mask on, can't see any light, and the practitioner is doing her thing, and I'm in process with whatever's happening for me. And it's peaceful, it's calm, it feels really good. And all of a sudden, just like in a movie theater, like the curtains parted, I was seeing very familiar and very uplifting scenes for me personally. So Pacific Northwest deciduous rainforest. I've always loved that area of the world. A low-flying drone shot over surf. And then I see myself underwater. I've always been very comfortable underwater as well. And then I get a scene of playing soccer with a friend in first grade. And so I was like, am I remembering the whole movie or am I actually remembering the experience? And then everything dims, and then a supernova went off in my head, is the best way I can describe it. So I'm squinting behind this blackout mask because it's so bright in my head. And it feels like, if anybody's seen Scarface, where at the end of Scarface, Tony Montana, Al Pacino's character, buries his face in the mountain of cocaine and then goes crazy with his machine gun. It was like that, except it was uncut, pure, unconditional love instead of cocaine. It was unconditional love coursing through my body to the extent where I was kind of laugh, crying, cry, laughing, because I couldn't contain like this flood of energy. And then the voice in my head changed. And what I heard in my own head was, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you made it. We're going to have so much fun together. And it was in my own voice, but just like a fraction of a degree off, almost like a twin that I knew was there, but I never really connected with. Come out of the experience, the practitioner has gotten a whole host of information. I'm just sharing what I've experienced. And then she says, okay, so you just reconnected with your higher self. And it's like you're in a high rise and you're on the elevator going from the 3rd to the 5th floor. And your guy on the 9th floor is like, hey buddy, up here, this is where the action is. So that became the name of my first book, which was My Guy on the 9th Floor. And every one of us has a higher self, a wisdom self. Every one of us has God on the inside. We're connected to all that is from the inside out. I can't even say I wrote it. It was a download. It was co-created. It was written in 2.5 weeks between Thanksgiving and Christmas in 2019. I was writing 16, 18 hours a day, not tired, not hungry. Like my wife was putting water in like a sandwich in front of me just so I was eating something. It was one of the most pure flow states I've ever experienced. And then it's been a lot of crazy, wild adventures ever since.
Oh, wow. What a fantastic story, Kevin. Thank you so much for sharing it. I do want to talk about the work you do now as a result of all that expansion. But first, can you tell us how you define, explain, or describe consciousness?
That's a great question. I'd say consciousness is our awareness of the awareness that we're not just human and we are greater than the sum of our parts. We are mental, we are physical, we are emotional, we are spiritual. We are also biochemical, bioelectric, thermodynamic, and quantum. And so there's a lot of different dimensionality to our experience as a human. And it's really the awareness of those things and of kind of our hyper-personal triggers and likes and dislikes and awarenesses of we are not the roles that we play. We are not the labels. We are not the archetypes. Those are helpful signposts to get us to that isness, the I am behind all of that. I guess in a broad and specific way, that's how I approach the concept of consciousness.
Yeah, I really resonate with your understanding of consciousness as non-local. And I appreciate being able to talk to people who've done their homework on this and understand that concept. I've heard you describe it in a very easy and comprehensible way before. So would you mind just kind of expanding on that a bit for the listeners?
It's funny, I actually just gave a talk with the California Institute of Human Sciences on this exact topic yesterday. It was a Applied Quantum Physics 101, an introduction to you was the topic. So yeah, non-local consciousness, we can think of it as connecting with collective consciousness. This can also be seen in extrasensory perception. This can be seen in a mother-child connection. You've seen the stories of a mom just knowing something has happened to her child. You know, our consciousness is not contained to the structure of the brain. Our energy is not contained to our biome of the mind-body system and the electromagnetic field there within. The CIA has known this for coming up on 100 years now with remote viewing, and from those that have experienced or done research into near-death, post-death, and after-death consciousness, that's, again, greater than the sum of the parts. So I think the most visible example would be if you've ever thought about someone you care about in a loving way, and you're like, man, we haven't talked for a while. I really miss them. And then they reach out. You just connected with them non-locally, and you basically called through energetic Wi-Fi, hey, give me a ring. And there's a lot of more natural abilities that every single one of us has that we can experience this as well. And this is where we get into those mediumships types of expressions, all the clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient feelings as well. It is that connection to spirit, to source, to God. That is our consciousness connecting through, we could call it the ether, through dimensionality, to what we may perceive as the energy we're all connected to, but we're maybe perceiving it as greater than our individual fractalized signature of spark, of energy that is the isness that's Melissa, that's the isness that's me.
Yeah, And basically, we're like existing as and within consciousness, not the other way around. Like it doesn't come from our brain, our nervous system, or any other physical, biological evolution. It doesn't originate from this plane of existence, actually. It's the isness in which we exist in physical form. So I like the way you put that.
Yeah. The beautiful part is that in that capacity, we are on the bleeding edge of creation. We are out here having this human experience as this individuated expression of universal consciousness. And the Melissa that you are and the Kevin that I am has never existed in a different dimension and will never exist from the understanding or the idea that everything everywhere is happening all at once. So there is no past or future, there is just now. And as we are in this kind of space-time continuum, perceived linear place, having all of these amazing capacities within us, we're actually creating our life from the inside out. Begins with thought, and belief turns into behavior, and then behavior gets embedded and kind of enmeshed in more rigid. You could think of it as like stiffer like an oak way of being instead of more malleable and flowing like a willow. And the more rigid we get, the more fixed we get, the more it becomes challenging to shift, to change, to find those flow states more often. Because we get so caught up in the storm of the matrix going on within our head in the form of mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual states of dis-ease that are stress, anxiety, chronic illness, mental illness, quote unquote, our traumatized relationships with our family of origin, and any other number of issues that we've experienced. It really is getting to that reconciliation of our relationship with our mind-body system that is that kind of linchpin or the lodestone that is the connector for us to be able to start getting our hands back on the wheel of these amazing earth suits, is what I call them, these perfectly adapted vehicles of exploration for this amazing planet we live on.
Incredible technology that we are.
It's the most amazing biotechnology that I feel has ever existed.
Exactly. I totally agree. And on that note, let's go a bit into how this biological technology works, because we've been so misled in our education and understanding of it. Let's talk about precognitive heart intelligence for a minute.
I'd say heart coherence. We can connect it with heart-brain coherence because a lot of times, especially in the West, we still like to funnel things through our thinker in order to parse it out. But a lot of this journey is really a transition from thinking to getting to places of knowing and deeper understanding without necessarily having to go through that conscious mind. So there's been research done by the Heart Math Institute and other organizations that are looking at our heart coherence and our heart resonance and the amazing things that we can glean from deeper understandings in those areas. Researchers packed a computer filled with positive and negative images. So on the positive side, birthdays, babies, puppies, flowers in a field. On the negative side, war, famine, anger, violence. And they wrote a program to randomly select the images that are going to be shown to study participants. As the images are being shown to the participants' brain and heart waves are being monitored. And what they found was, if there is a negative image that is being shown, the heart's coherence or the heart's resonance shifted into dissonance 4 seconds before the image was even shown to the participant. So this is where we get into an understanding, or maybe a first-time awareness, that we are all precognitive. We are all precogs, if you've seen the Minority Report movie with Tom Cruise. Most of us are trained away from that in life. Men have it, women have it, it's intuition, and we get trained away from those inner knowings. So if we get quiet on the inside and we can start to listen to that signal from the heart, we can actually use that as our North Star, as our inner compass through life. So we are to the level of biophysical reaction and response to our environment that our system knows what's coming at least 4 seconds before something happens. Other research from that study, there's a child who was in the hospital and his assistant's dog was named Mabel. His name's Josh. And same thing, they hooked up the helper dog with EKG and electrodes with EEG sensors to the dog and to the boy. And they showed an incoherence or dissonance when they were separated and a coherence or resonance when they were in the same room as each other. And we can feel this in everyday life. So if you walk into a room and there's been a fight, You may feel that static in the air. You may feel that, ooh, what just happened in here? Or if there's a birthday party and there's a celebration, we may feel this kind of uplifting or upwelling positivity on the inside. This is all of us sharing our electromagnetic and biome information with each other, because our electromagnetic fields extend 12 to 15 feet in all directions at all times. So if we spend any amount of time with a person, we're sharing our genetic and our bioelectric information constantly with each other. We're just trained away from listening to those intuitive signals to our detriment in a lot of ways. Because once we start connecting with this inner knowing, with these intuitions, with these precognitive ways of being, we can much more easily and effortlessly navigate life and go more towards what it is we do want to experience. And with less resistance, just gently move away from what it is that we're ready to experience less of.
Right, right. I just find that research so fascinating. When I first found it a couple of years ago, I was like, oh, I'm sorry, the heart has neurons? What do you mean? Why didn't anyone ever tell me this? We have neurons in our heart, and the connections, the communication is actually far greater from the heart to the brain than from the brain to the heart. So much information that you're ignoring and squishing and saying that's not relevant because it's not within my training or my scope of understanding or programming or what I can see with my eyes or hear with my ears.
It's literally the blueprint is there on the inside, and we just keep overriding it or ignoring it because we think we consciously know better or some other authority figure knows better. And we keep outsourcing our own inner direction. We keep outsourcing our own fulfillment, our own knowing, our own sense of being, because we do get trained away from it. We lose the recognition that everything in life is a mirror. We feel like we're looking out through our eyes, through the windows of our eyes.
And it's a very narrow viewpoint. And then we just have a very limited amount of information that we are all operating within as though it is objective and complete truth. And it's just so small.
And that's the rub, where we think we're living this objective perception of life. And through that, I would say misperception, we're assuming that we are right.
Mm-hmm.
It's that cognitive bias where I'm thinking it and I know I'm right, so everybody else must be wrong. And it's this entanglement with this zero-sum game of life that we get caught up in, where it's you're either with us or against us. You're an Apple person or you're a Samsung person. You're red or you're blue. And everything is subjective because everything is connected to something else. And so one of the best ways that we can start unpacking that is just asking why. Let's get back to that 3 and 4-year-old inside and start asking why a whole lot more, especially for the things that are going on inside our mind-body system.
Yeah.
And we might get frustrated, we might get scared, and we might have reactions, and that is great because we're starting that journey of reconciling all that stuff on the inside, letting go of our resistance and attachment to anything on the outside of us. And I include our thoughts, our reactions, and our emotions when I say on the outside of us. Because even though we're experiencing those perceptively internally of the mind-body system, it is still not the capital M, me, not the capital Y, you, who is actually experiencing those. Those are just triggered reactions of an integrated system within a 3-dimensional space. And so gaining that observer perspective, that 4th dimensional observer perspective internally, it's our birthright. It's our natural state of being. It is the path to radical enlightenment in our modern life. We don't have to go to a mountaintop for 8 years. We don't have to meditate for 8 hours a day to get there. We can actually just live life with greater awareness, chip away at it one step at a time. And next thing you know, you're living a whole brand new you type of life.
Yeah, definitely. Since you're touching on that, you have a really interesting process of learning to experience contrast without resistance. I wonder if you're willing to share it with us.
Absolutely. I did stumble into it when I was about 18, when I thought about not being here anymore. I thought about suicide. And now I call it the burn it out method, because our mind-body system wants us to function, but it wants us to be safe. So it wants us to stay in the job. It wants us to stay in maybe less than desirable relationships because they are a pattern that we've experienced before. So it's known territory. Our systems want us to stay under the belief system of our family of origin, because then it doesn't have to do work. It can just hit cruise control and let us just sit in this kind of, limited prison of the mind body and just go through the life of living what the outside world says. So the best way that I've found to push our comfort zone gently is if you have a negative thought, take it and extend it beyond what you are feeling comfortable to think. So if it's a negative thought about ourselves or others, and this is an exercise my wife and I did when our daughter was young, and we had a conscious conversation and we decided we want one of us to always be with our daughter. We don't want to outsource our parenting. And so we said, okay, I'm going to work, and babe, you're going to stay home, and we're just going to put our heads down and crank. And I was working double duty at the time. I was working in a restaurant about 4 or 5 nights a week, and I was also working in design during the week. So I was up before they were awake, and I was home after they went to sleep for a period of time. But we had this conversation where it was like really holding our feet to the fire and like, hey, what are we going to do? And it's like, it doesn't matter if we end up in a box underneath an overpass. We're doing this. Like, we are in, we're going to make it work. And that was the first time we like, would we be okay if we lost everything? I'm like, yeah, I can get a job bagging groceries. If we need to, I can get a job at Amazon. We'll be able to do it. So what we did was push out the fear of the unknown, come back to the answer that was best for us in the moment, and then take steps towards where we wanted to go. So if we have a negative thought or a limiting thought about ourselves, others, or the world, that's an opportunity to blow out that duality contrast for that exact reason. It's not either or, it's yes and. And so if we have that ability, we call it the spiral exercise, where take that starting thought, oh, I can't do that because I'm not good at it. What happens if I don't do it? Then I don't take any chances in life. And then I start self-medicating with food and with drugs. And so we take it to the nth degree of silliness beyond what we're willing to let ourselves go to within those constructs of the mind-body system. I've done this with a lot of post-death consciousness work, where one of the processes that we guide in session with clients is burning out the trauma of birth and the fear of death within a single session. And when I went through this process, I've always had a pretty good imagination. So my system was just throwing every gnarly way that I could possibly imagine expiring in this life. It's like, what about a car accident? What about a terrorist attack? What about a plane crash, like in Donnie Darko, plane crashing on your house? Dinosaurs come back and they start terrorizing humanity. What if an asteroid hits? And I just let myself go through all of these thoughts, all of these fears, everything else, and moving all the way through all of those things to the other side. What I found was, once again, more space, more freedom, more quiet mind state, and more presence in the moment. And so you can do this with everything, any personal limitation. Burn out the negative. And then it's important to also burn out the positive, because we're talking about a spectrum of contrast. So if you allow yourself, or if you do the thought exercise, or even write it out step by step, going worst case scenario with anything that's in front of you, a relationship, a new job, turning your side hustle into your full-time gig, taking that chance or taking that class or trying something new you've always been afraid of, you burn out the fear to release it. And then you actually burn out the best case scenario to also release our attachment to the outcome. And if we can just be present and take one step at a time without attachment to outcome, without resistance to where we are, that's going to be a huge exercise that any of us can ever do at any time to really, again, come back to that peaceful present moment, come back to that quiet mind state, connect with that inner compass, and then take steps with right action in the direction we want to go in life.
Yeah, it's very similar to what I do in letting everything be processed fully. Like everything just wants to be expressed and experienced fully to some degree. And when we cut it off prematurely, it just sits there and it gets stuck and becomes putrid. And then it shows up in other undesirable ways, right? Like depression, anxiety, physical illness, stuff like that. But when we allow ourselves to experience it fully and keep taking it a step further until it dissipates, then we can move forward. And it doesn't last that long. We're so afraid to feel sometimes. We have this high tolerance for consequential discomfort to the point that we normalize it and live with this chronic discomfort when all we have to do is process it out in small doses. But we tend to prefer dealing with the consequences, which in my experience are always worse. So it's backwards.
I've always been a practitioner of holding myself to task, we can call it. And it was one step at a time. And I'd catch one thought in the beginning and say, that's not a good thought. I'm going to focus on that and take care of that. And what you said is so important, of sitting with it, allowing it to diminish, allowing it to subside, or to move all the way through it. Because if we do a half step, or if we kind of, from a football analogy, kind of move the chains, but we don't get that first down, that then becomes the new benchmark of limitation, fear, separation from ourselves that our system knows it has to go to in order to get the result it wants. Very similarly to if anyone has ever had a toddler pitching a fit and throwing a tantrum in the store because they want a toy or a candy, and you hold out for 9 minutes and you just hold the line, and then at 9 minutes you give in and you say, okay, you've just informed that beautiful, enlightened being that they got to go hard for 9 minutes to get what they want. Our subconscious mind-body systems are the exact same way. If we don't move all the way through the process, allow our system to settle back down and recognize, okay, we weren't about to die. This is just a fearful thought. Now you're transforming your relationship with fear and your own limitations.
Yeah. I really appreciate how much you focus on personal responsibility. We're often really afraid to take personal responsibility for our own energetic makeup, but that strips us of all the incredible power that we truly have over our lives. And I think some of it comes from just not knowing that it matters, like not knowing that we are more energy than anything else. So if we can understand that and work with the energy that we are, we change our lives. I'm very left brain dominant, so I need to understand it. I need to have hard evidence. And I know I'm not alone in that, but there's a big difference between needing more information to consider a concept and just being so rigid and attached that you refuse to see beyond your current belief system. To me, that's not skepticism. That's just dogma. It's willful ignorance. So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about our energetic makeup and some of the hard research on that.
Yeah, a few different studies, and we're going to pull in a couple different dimensions to this as well. Because, as I mentioned, we're multifaceted, multidimensional, and we are part of an energetic system, and the energetic system influences other parts of our experience as well. William Tiller did research at Stanford, over 1,000 experiments with practiced meditators and monks, and hooked them up to an EEG machine with electrodes connecting to a copper wall. And what they saw was the electrostatic charge that's put off with practiced meditator in meditation with positive thoughts and intentions for either someone else or a group. The electrostatic charge was 50,000 times that with meditative intention, as opposed to just sitting and just being. There's another physicist, I can't remember his last name. In 94, he did some research looking at voltage with a similar approach to just standing around, not really doing or thinking much in meditation, and then in focused meditation with positive vibes, let's call it, with love and unconditional love for whoever our focus is. Nothing going on. Electrostatic charge was 10 to 15 millivolts. Meditation pumped it up to 3 volts. And then meditation with positive intention, 190 volts. So there's almost a 2 million% increase between 10 to 15 millivolts and 190 volts. So that's one kind of facet of our electromagnetic potential. Another is just energy. So not doing anything, waking up, breathing, just not even being physically active, we burn about 1,300 calories a day, average human being. At that rate of energetic output, we put off enough energy to power a desk fan. Practiced athletes, conditioned athletes at a full sprint, I'm thinking like Carl Lewis, put out enough energy to heat a stove to 350 degrees. So we are electromagnetic and we are thermodynamic. That's what our range is, let's call it. And our electromagnetic field also responds to environmental stressors. And it's also connected to our physiology. So when we are in a fight, flight, freeze state, we are in dissonance, or we are in incoherence, going back to that coherence or incoherence of the HARP state. When that happens, our electromagnetic field goes from a nice kind of productive hum to more of a static dissonance. We aren't in resonance, we are in resistance, or we are in attachment. The other thing that happens, and I'm glad you mentioned that left hemisphere, that more pragmatic, practical, problem-solving state of being that we get to in a stress response, or if we're more right brain dominant, we get into more of an emotional reaction. What happens is there's a fluid-filled membrane that connects the two hemispheres of the brain called the corpus callosum. So when we're in a stress response, the corpus callosum drains, we dump into our dominant hemisphere, and that in turn shifts us into a dissonant electromagnetic reaction or response, which shifts our electromagnetic field into incoherence. The challenge with modern life is we don't often do exercises or physical movements to shift us back into resonance or coherence. It's as simple as either doing bilaterally different moves or crossing the midline of the body. So if we're in our normal day, we go to sleep in a single plane of existence. We wake up, we sit at the table, we eat breakfast, we drive to work, or we walk to our office at home. We sit at the computer. We are in a linear channel. We go work out. We're running or we're lifting weights in a linear channel, unless we're doing yoga or dynamic movement. So if we don't cross the midline of the body, if we don't cross that equator, we're not doing anything to affect our electromagnetic field. So if anybody has an outlet in a bathroom, they've got that test and reset button. Because if water gets in there, we don't want to short things out. We don't want to create a fire. So it'll trip that outlet. And that's really what we're doing in a positive way when we're resetting our electromagnetic field after a stressful or trauma experience. The challenge we experience as humans is that we're soaked in these low-grade states of stress response because of our modern life. So once we start to disconnect from these external influences, take a breath, get outside. We can do whole brain exercises, breath work, rebounding, jumping jacks, going for a walk in nature, grounding in water or nature. All of those help to hit that internal reset button and reset our electromagnetic field to coherence and resonance. And if we are in any state of stress response, we're not going to have a knowing internally. We're going to be stuck in the crosstown traffic of the hamster wheel of the mind. We're going to be stuck in fear loops. We're going to be stuck in negative thoughts about ourselves or others. And then we just let it go and we go about our day, but we never hit the reset button. So instead of filling our cup up from the inside with a counter belief to a negative thought, our system doubles down because it just wants to keep us safe. Fulfillment and happiness and joy is a different department. Our subconscious isn't focused on that. So it really is up to us to consciously override or reset from these stressful states in order to experience more electromagnetic harmony, more frequency and resonance broadcast of positivity, of love, of stasis, as opposed to being how we feel inundated with everything outside of us. But it really just boils down to we are either in resonance with peaceful presence and harmonious co-creation of positivity or not. And it's as simple as on-off switch. It's yes or no. We're in flow or resistance.
Absolutely. Thank you for that in-depth explanation. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up here. But before we do, what is one thought that you'd like to leave with our listeners as it relates to what we've talked about here today and the expansion of consciousness?
You are wildly important. You are more important than you know. You are more powerful than you know. You are more capable than you recognize. And you have all the tools you need to get everything that you desire in life, whatever that is. And that really comes with an understanding of what are my talents? And if we don't feel like we have one, that's a beautiful journey to go on. Every single one of us has a natural talent. So give yourself space to identify what your natural talent is and then find out what you like. Explore. What are you tapped into? You marry your natural talents with your inspirations or your interests. And for me, that's the recipe to fulfillment.
Nice. Very nice. Thank you so much for joining us today. This was fantastic. It's so much fun to talk to you. I definitely could do this for another couple hours, but we're not gonna.
Right back at you, Melissa. Thank you so much for the conversation, for these deep dive topics. It's a beautiful space to be in. I'm so grateful for the conversation.
I loved having you. Tell us where people can find out more about you, what you're up to these days, maybe your amazing book. I love your book.
Best place to get the book and other self-study tools would be radicalenlightenment.com. We've got a guided meditation to release a lifetime of stress. We've got a daily practice of positive physiological disruptions that we recommend everybody do to maintain that balance in life. If you're looking for more one-on-one work or some more guidance, I recommend checking out rapidtransformationsessions.com. That's the best place to find more of the work that my wife and I do with one-on-one clients. And then also workshops, group work, public events. Those are going to be on radicalenlightenment.com as well. And pretty much Radical Enlightenment on most media channels, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook.
Okay, awesome. We will definitely have all of that in the show notes. And you guys stick around and I'll share my takeaways about my talk with Kevin today. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Melissa. It was a pleasure. I appreciate it.
I had such a great time talking with Kevin. we touched on quite a variety of deep dive topics, and it made me think back to the first couple of years of starting out really in earnest on this path of paradigm shifts and reprogramming. There were times that it was so overwhelming. So I thought that instead of diving even deeper in the takeaways, this time I would take it back to basics and stick with one general concept and a practical experiment that anyone can do for free at any time they choose and repeat as often as they like. Kevin talked a lot in different ways about creating our life from the inside out and managing our own energy fields. So that's the concept I'm choosing for this episode's takeaways. It can be a difficult concept for us to grasp, and we aren't generally keen on trying new things that we don't personally have a proven track record with. Most of us consider our own personal experience to be the most compelling evidence for the possibilities available to us, whether we realize that we do that or not. But it's important to understand that our personal experience is only a reflection of our past and present paradigms. It's not set in stone. But in order to prove to ourselves that new possibilities do exist, we have to make the effort to create the space for new experiences. If we don't do it on purpose, we are not likely to make that space without a truly compelling reason. So most of us end up staying stuck right where we are until something major happens and life forces the space open, like the death of a loved one, divorce, job loss, a devastating diagnosis, things like that. It is unnatural for humans to be chronically dissatisfied and unhappy. Totally unnatural. And although we tolerate those conditions, we don't truly adapt to them. We can't, because that state of being is fundamentally false to our true nature. So instead, we find all sorts of self-medicating behaviors and distractions to soothe ourselves. Though they never prove to be long-term solutions, and they always have consequences that tend to make things worse. At the very least, we chastise and shame ourselves for our efforts to feel better and punish ourselves out of any kind of enjoyment. We think we don't have a choice but to suffer and do our best to soothe. That's life. We normalize it, but it is anything but normal, and we do have a choice. We tend to believe that we have to hold on to what we have, relationships, friends, jobs, homes, whatever, until something better comes along, until we see a new possibility. Since that's not how life works, we end up believing that we've proven to ourselves that there are no other options for us. So we just keep hoping something better will come, but fearing that it probably won't. Of course, holding on to what we already have in fear just yields more of what we already have. It's a vicious cycle. Hope, fear, dissatisfaction. Hope, fear, dissatisfaction. It goes round and round until we either do something different or life kicks us out of the cycle in an effort to move us forward. Tomorrow is always being created today. If our life is full of people, obligations, responsibilities, distractions, denials, and jam-packed schedules, there's just no room for new and better. We have to make the space available first, and then life will fill the space with options. And then we get to choose to either boldly step into the unknown or run back to what feels safe but miserable. Life will always fill the empty space if we allow it to, but we have to make the room for it first. It can't be any other way. It never has been and it never will be. Look back over your life and your own experiences. Look for evidence of this and it will start to become clear to you. How can we begin to create the space for new possibilities without having to be pushed into it by some traumatic or tragic event, or without trying to push ourselves into making changes that we aren't ready for? Start small and simple until you prove to yourself that this is how it works. Take a vacation, not a getaway kind of vacation, but a personal, energetic vacation, one that you can take for free while living your daily life. It's a vacation from all energy that does not support and directly contribute to your genuine well-being and happiness. Do this for one whole week, longer if you want to, but at least make a 1-week commitment to yourself to intentionally avoid allowing anything to set up camp in your energy field that makes you feel sad, angry, jealous, irritated, fearful, or judgmental of yourself or someone else. And if something not within your control enters your awareness that has a negative impact on you, deal with it right in that moment. For example, if someone cuts you off in traffic and you feel yourself getting angry, acknowledge it immediately. Ask yourself, do I want to feel angry right now? Is that something I want to focus on this week? If the answer is no, take a deep breath, realize nothing really happened here, nothing went wrong. You can be mad at that driver next week if you want to, but this week you just don't want to. This week, you're taking a vacation from it. Let it go and do not speak of it again. Don't go into work and talk about it. Let it go. Just this week. Prior to starting your vacation week, make a very clear list of the things you feel you must do that week. Maybe your job, cooking, carting kids around, whatever it is. Make it the bare minimum, only what is already planned and that you feel will be completely necessary. And stick to it. Honor it. If you do not honor and respect your own time, no one else will either, I promise. If you normally take your kid to soccer practice, for example, and feel obligated to stand around and talk with the other moms, but you really don't want to, don't do it. Stay in the car and read a book. Listen to music. Lay the seat back and rest your eyes. Do anything that feels better than obligatory socializing, or whatever it is. During your vacation week, there can be no accepting extra work, social invitations, family obligations, or anything outside of the scheduled responsibilities that you set up at the beginning of your vacation week, unless it's something that truly excites you and lights you up. You don't have to explain anything to anyone. Simply say, no, I can't this week, maybe next week. If someone persists in demanding an explanation, tell them you have something already scheduled and it's personal. In addition to that, make a note of the fact that your boundaries are such that people in your life feel they have a right to question you that way. During your vacation week, do not watch the news media or listen to any political commentary. Zero, none. Don't even talk about it or be around people talking about it. If you're afraid people will think you're crazy, just tell them you're conducting a personal experiment. You'll be back next week. You guys can all save the world next week. Don't participate in personal social media of any kind this week. No scrolling, no checking, no posting, no liking, no commenting. Turn off all your notifications for that stuff for the week. Fill the time you normally do these things with something that lifts your spirits, something that makes you feel free, or something you've been really wanting to do but haven't found the time to do. Clean out a closet, bag up some donation items, drive over to that little shop you pass on your way to work that you've always wanted to check out. You're on vacation. During your vacation week, do not participate in gossip of any kind. No talking about anyone that you're not talking to directly in that moment. Do not complain to anyone about anything this week. You're on vacation from it. If you have a complaint, jot it down and revisit it next week. It can wait a week. No ruminating. If you're prone to driving something into the ground with your own thoughts, again, jot it down and revisit it next week if you want to. But this week, every time it comes up in your mind, make a note and choose a new topic, one that makes you smile. I have a picture of my daughter as a baby that I keep handy. I cannot help but smile and feel so much love every time I look at that picture. I can change the topic instantly. No talking crap about yourself this week. Not to anyone else and not to yourself in your own head. If you do, make a note of it if you want to, and then quickly change the subject. No matter how many times you have to stop yourself and change the subject, you may not speak or think of yourself in any way that is not loving and compassionate. Not this week. During this vacation week, spend a minimum of 5 minutes every day outside. Put your bare feet on the ground, let the sun shine on your face, touch a tree, anything. Just be outside by yourself for a minimum of 5 minutes and connect to nature in some way. Do something you love every day this week for a minimum of 30 minutes. Take a walk, read a book, dance in the kitchen, go to the park, listen to music, meditate, listen to or think about something that makes you laugh out loud. Anything that's just for you, just for the joy of it. Another great option to fill this time would be the daily practice of positive physiological disruptions that Kevin talked about. You can find them for free on his website, and they're really simple, quick, and helpful. Just go to the resources tab. It's called the 3-Minute Daily Nervous System Reset. I'll leave a link in the show notes. Everyone has 30 minutes, so don't say you don't have time. Do it during the time you normally do the things that you're taking a vacation from this week. Draw firm boundaries around these specific times. Boundaries that include clear consequences if they're not respected. Unless something is burning down or someone is bleeding out, no one needs you right now. Every night before you go to bed during your vacation week, make a list of anything that made you smile, laugh, or feel good that day, and anything you're grateful for. Do not list anything you screwed up or could have done better. Now is not the time. You're on vacation. You can evaluate all that next week if you want to. As you close your eyes to go to sleep, take 10 deep belly breaths, in through the nose for 5 seconds. Hold for 2 seconds, and control release the breath for 8 seconds out through the mouth. It's just 1 week. You can do anything for 1 week. You can take this vacation whenever and as often as you like. You can make parts of it permanent if you want to. But for now, just make the decision and commit to 1 week. You cannot fail at this. There is no scorekeeper. Just do your best every day and observe yourself without judgment. Keep a vacation journal. If the practices of this energetic vacation week are not regular practices of yours, I guarantee you will be shocked at what you learn and the possibilities that open up. I'd love to hear from anyone who takes this energetic vacation challenge. You are worth it, and you got this. Thank you for listening to Consciousness Explored. Consciousness Explored is part of the Mirasee FM podcast network, which also includes such shows as Once Upon a Business and Neuroscience of Coaching. A special thanks to Kevin Russell for generously sharing his time and expertise with us today. In the show notes, you'll find the link to his website, radicalenlightenment.com. If you'd like to reach out to me, I would love to hear from you. My contact information is in the show notes or just below on YouTube. I personally read and respond to all my emails, and I absolutely love hearing from you guys. To make sure you don't miss great episodes coming up on Consciousness Explored, please follow us on Mirasee FM's YouTube channel or your favorite podcast player. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave us a comment or a starred review. It really is the best way to help us get these ideas to more people. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.